appreciate that. So now we're going to hear a few words from John. As you know, he's had a little illness and he's going to have a little chit chat. He's back and healthy as ever. John?
I don't know about being back as healthy as ever, but it is a sort of a wake-up call when you're in the emergency department and they call you in and the doctor says to you, "Oh, you just had a heart attack." And you say, "Well, golly, what happens next?" Well, what happens next is about a week full of testing and dealing with the excellent care that you do get. Once you're inside Health Sciences North, you're really well looked after. The waiting room is another situation. As a matter of fact, I sent a little letter off to the paper saying that, we shouldn't have to have our homeless occupying so much of the waiting room space at Health Sciences North. Of course, they can't throw them out, but what we really need is our city to provide more accommodation for these individuals so they don't have to go to warming places like our library and indeed the Health Sciences North waiting room. So anyway, I was there for a couple of days and they put a stent in me and I'm supposed to be back as good as normal. Although they did tell me, don't drive for a month. And that was after I was driving around like crazy the day before. So I'm grounded. I want to thank Keith Argent for picking me up today, and he'll be driving me back. And anybody else who wants to drive me around for the next month, I'm willing to go with you. And I want to thank our fine CARP board, Marianne, Pauline, Stan, and Stan and Pauline are over here at our 50-50 table. And I want to thank especially Marianne for carrying in an incredible food basket that weighed about 50 pounds. I think she was trying to do me in or something. Is I supposed to lift 10 pounds? Anyway, an excellent food basket, incredible. Thanks, gang. I want to thank Pat Falter, who's going to be introducing some of our guests today. This is wintertime, and that means, of course, indoor activities, and one of the best indoor activities you can partake in is reading. And we're going to hear from some authors, Sudbury authors today, and a Sudbury publishing house as well too. We're recording this so we can send it out to our members and the general public as well too, to keep them informed about the real talent we have here in the arts community. And of course, writing is one of the arts endeavors. And how people can put, 400 pages down on paper, I don't know. I have a difficulty, scribbling out one letter, let alone page after page after page. So the question is, are these authors introverted individuals? Are they frustrated extroverts? What is it that makes these people write? Maybe we'll have a chance to ask them today. But Keith, do we have anything else to say before we introduce Pat?
Pardon?
Do we have anything else to say?
Just about the 50-50 and
yes.
membership. We got
make sure they're 50-50. Also, CARP membership is available. The best way to do it is by...
I'll be there.
Yep, you can tell the folks how they can get their CARP membership. Those of you here and also those of you who will be viewing online later on. So thanks for all those well wishes about recovery and that sort of thing. I had a stent back in 2005. That was 20 years ago. And it's still good. But they put another one in just in case, right? So, and they can keep doing that. I've talked to people who have had triple bypasses, stents galore. It's amazing how you can keep that old pump going. I'm counting on it. Anyway, so I can introduce Pat?
Yeah, go right ahead.
An old friend. I always question that term when you talk about old friends, right? Because that can mean so much. How about long-term friends, right? Because Pat and I were neighbors for many, many years. The kids grew up together and so on and so forth. And thankfully, all our kids are out there making more money than we are, so they're eligible to come here. I got thinking about that, by the way, about the other day, of course, when these things happen to you and you can't go out, you can't shove and you can't drive, and you're thinking, well, maybe I should be here being looked after day after day. And looking at the activities out there, there's a lot of fun things happen here. Keith, I'm looking at you. There's a lot of fun things happen here.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We may all be here eventually, but it is a great spot. One of the best retirement homes we have here in the Sudbury area, the Red Oak Villa. And thanks to the staff here and the gang that look after us when we come. But right now it's time to introduce Pat. Come on down. Long time. I should do a little. Did I do a brief introduction for you? Pat is a long-time educator. She educated my kids. Were in classes that she taught over at Alexander Public School. And then later on you became one of these highfalutin educator experts, right? Yeah. You went to Toronto?
Well, you have to say that you were chair of the board then when I was superintendent.
Well, yeah. Am I guilty then? I'm not sure. That's true. I was on the school board for a while, and that's right, yeah. You were one of my people.
Yeah, had my back when we were closing schools.
Yeah, yeah, that was a very traumatic time, I must say. And now I understand that enrollment is going up again. So you have to talk in the microphone here so that we can record all this. Not forward.
This is good. Okay, thank you all for coming again. And as John said, I'm going to introduce the three speakers that we have this afternoon. Each of them will present for 10 minutes or so, and they'll be available at the end of the formal presentations at their individual.
Pat, put the speaker closer.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So they'll show you copies of their books, and if you're interested, you can buy them. And I just want to say how privileged I think it is that we live in Canada. Did you know that we have a 99% literacy rate? And that means that virtually every person in Canada is able to read. And just to compare that to the United States, no good reason, they have a 79% literacy rate.
Trump included?
And given the weather that we've been having, as John said, what better time to settle down with a good book? And as Christina Rossetti, who was a poet and author, has called, in this bleak midwinter. And this is what she said: in the bleak midwinter, frosty wind made moan, earth stood hard as iron, water like a stone. Now, doesn't that exactly express what the weather has been like this week in Sudbury? So our first speaker is Dieter Boozy. He's going to tell us about his latest book, the second edition, Come On Over, Northeastern Ontario A to Z. Dieter is a professor emeritus from the history department at Laurentian University. He's published many academic books and articles. I understand that he traveled extensively across northeastern Ontario and gathered information from historians, geographers, and librarians who had researched specific sites in their area. And I'm sure that the second edition is going to be just as interesting as the first one. So, Dieter?
Thank you, John, Pat, and CARP. It's a privilege to be here.
Microphone.
What's this? Yes, unfortunately. All right. I'm going to introduce first a few books that are about our region or stories that I think should be recommended for a winter time, our long winter of reading, and our short summers we should also read, in my view. I do this with the intention of selling local. In other words, you should buy local, not only your groceries to avoid the problems we're having with our southern, what is he, an ally? Maybe before, who knows. Anyway, we should buy local, not only in terms of food, but also in terms of ideas. And we have some very good things here in Sudbury. First, let me say what I think is still the best history book about Sudbury. It's called Railtown to Regional Capital, It was edited by a colleague, Carl Wallace and Ashley Thompson. It came out in 1993, and I think it's still the best book on Sudbury's history. It's missing the last 50 years. In other words, it doesn't tell us the story of the regreening. It doesn't tell us the story of the transformation of our economy. But up till the 70s, it's the best book. The last chapter in particular is important since I wrote it. By the way, this is not a good time to present anything. This is our time to nap, isn't it? Okay, here's a few books that I recommend. First, in fiction, by a former student, Kim Fowler is a local poet and now novelist who's written a historical novel about Creighton Mine. It's a wonderful romance, and it teaches us a lot about the role and the difficulties women who were a little on the sassy side had at that time. It's a very involved story because a young mining engineer gets involved with a daughter and keeps to the prim and proper, except for one evening when he has, in the words of the day, his way with her. Then he shunts her aside and takes up with the younger sister. I'll leave the rest of the story for you to follow. I suspect there will even be a sequel. Second is by a friend of mine, Rod Carley. He's not from Sudbury, but he's also published by our local publisher. In other words, Latitude 46, who has a little house over there where they're selling books, and she'll talk to you about other books as well. It's a great little book called Rough, and it's based on a lot of word plays, but it takes you back to Shakespearean times without ever leaving our time. If you want to read a good Canadian biography, I recommend I'm Your Man. It's a life of Leonard Cohen by Sylvie Siemens. What is good about that book is not only that it tears you from, you're almost moving the pages before you finish them, it's so well written, but all the background to the music that he wrote. Yes, I know there's all the sides of all the women that inspired his music, but the 100 and some different verses to Hallelujah and how they came to be one final version that he accepted, which he didn't, by the way, always sing. He sang sometimes verses that were only in his drafts. It's a great book. Back to Sudbury. One of the little books that was recently produced in Sudbury is A Changing Skyline. I have no interest in this book except that I wrote the afterword. I make no money out of it, but I want to push it because it's some of the best prose about how that image to the west of us in Copper Cliff is going to change someday, and how for 2 generations it dominated our skyline and in some ways dominated our minds. It certainly dominated the media everywhere in the world, especially in Toronto. They couldn't take a picture of Sudbury without the super stag. My little pieces afterwards challenges the way that most people talk about the regreening of Sudbury. I'm sure that some of you have seen presentations, and there's films at Dynamic Earth that deal with the regreening of Sudbury. What they do is they talk about the regreening of a landscape. They don't talk about who originally fought the pollution, who was against emissions, who were the people who in some ways created a movement that made it possible to speak against pollution. Sudbury, lived from that place. When I came to Sudbury in 1969, my neighbors said, if there's no smoke coming out of that, there's no food on my table. When I came here, there were very few people against pollution. That's the big question. How did Sudbury become to be against pollution when once many people here favored it? The films don't tell you that. What other books do I want to sell to you? There's only a few copies over there of Untold. It's the military history of our area. When my colleague and I, Graham Mount, and I want to give him credit, he and I did the first volume of Come On Over. The second one I did by myself because he's in a bad way in terms of health. What we did is we traveled all of northeastern Ontario, and we discovered in every little town there's a monument to soldiers. And yet when we examined the national histories of the military in Canada, you know that there was not one word about northeastern soldiers, where they participated, what they contributed, and how they're memorialized. So we decided we would do a quick little book about the military in northeastern Ontario. The end result was 2 volumes, one emphasizing the First World War, the other the Second World War. That one's out of print, but the First World War one is still here. Those 2 books, those 2 volumes won the prize for the best regional study in the last 3 years in 2020 of the Ontario Historical Society. Those 2 volumes show what people from here contributed. Who won a Victoria Cross from Sault Ste. Marie and Sudbury? And who's credited with that? Who was formally credited with that Victoria Cross? The people in southwestern Ontario, because that's the battalion that that person was put into. We have lots of examples. Well, finally, and this is what I really want you to know about, the 2nd edition of Come On Over, Northeastern Ontario. I'm going to grab a drink of water if I may.
While Dieter is grabbing a book of water, I just want to mention that I've had the opportunity to read both the 1st and 2nd edition, and I think that this book should be in every schoolroom in Northern Ontario. I came here in 1966. I'm a Southern Ontario guy. You know, I knew nothing about Northern Ontario. I lived in Timmins, I've lived in North Bay, and of course I traveled the north. And I didn't know all this stuff, Dieter. I mean, I didn't know all this history that was here. It's all fascinating stuff, and I just learned it from your book. And I think that all the kids, really, and adults here in Northern Ontario, you should have a copy of this book, because this is our heritage.
Thank you. I can't disagree with John. I think it should be in every school, but I also think it should be in the hands of people in Southern Ontario who should learn something about other parts of the country. For example, this book is full of firsts. Did you know that Northeastern Ontario had the first female mayor in Canada? Did you know that we had the first black mayor in Canada? Where do you think the first electric canal locks were in the world? Sault Ste. Marie. I can go on with that list. This book is full of digenettes, little stories that came from 21 sessions that we did, my colleague and I, on the CBC. What we did is we did our research. As John said, we went all over Northeastern Ontario. Then we came back here, and on the CBC in the morning show, we gave a little story about some community. And then we asked people to send us their stories about their community. And we incorporated some of those into this book. I'll just say a couple more things with this so as to give my other authors a chance to speak. And that is that what's new in the 2nd edition? Well, all of the demographic information about the towns and cities is updated. There's much more about Indigenous issues. For example, the new hiking paths on the Manitoulin. What else is in here? David Pearson has written a great chapter on geology. Watch out, everything under our feet, as he demonstrates, is still moving. It's not just hard rock here, but mobile rock. Anyway, the book covers forest fires, it covers forestry, it covers parks, rivers. How many parks do we have in this region? Provincial. Okay, 33. Where do all the rivers go? What if you go to Chapleau and dump a pail of water just north of Chapleau? Where's it going to go?
North.
James Bay. If you go a little southwest of Chapleau and dump a pail of water, where's it going to go? West, and then around through the Great Lakes and come out in the St. Lawrence. But if you go to Mattawa and dump a pail of water there, where's it going to go? Straight down to the Ottawa. In other words, we've got 3 systems. The book is full of that kind of information. I will stop at that point. and say that at the end of this, if you have any questions about the book, about my background as a historian who taught at Laurentian and in Germany and in the States and in Australia, feel free. Thank you.
Thank you, Dieter. I personally have read 3 of those books, and I can attest to the fact that they're very interesting and well worth a read, especially now in the winter or whenever. Our second speaker is Anne Marie Mawhinney. She's a retired educator who has published 2 books independently and is almost finished a 3rd one. Her first book was Spindrifts, and it was shortlisted in 2022 for 3 awards, including a very prestigious one, the Rakuten Kobo Emerging Writers Prize in Literary Fiction. And there will be a draw at the end of our official meeting for a free copy of Spindrifts. So come on over and fill out a ballot. Anne-Marie?
Thank you. Thank you, Pat, and thank you, John and CARP, for inviting me. Dieter's always a hard person to follow when people are talking, as we are today. As Pat mentioned, I'm a self-published indie author. What that means is, in addition to writing, I also publish my own work. I'm my own marketer, and so that means that, like a traditional publishing house, I become the person that sources out the editing, the proofreading, the cover design, and then the marketing afterwards. When I first started writing, I thought 1 book and done, and we'll just see what happens. And I was quite shocked to win those book awards, or to be shortlisted with those book awards. To me, that was just a way to market the book and get word out. So I'd like to say that although there's still some places a bias about self-published or indie authors, when I started to network through social media with other indie authors and read their books, a lot of Canadians and other parts of the world, I have read some very amazing literature that's very accessible. My books are available in over 50,000 bookstores, independent bookstores, and big name like Barnes & Noble and Chapters, usually through online access, but they're everywhere. I've had people buy them in Germany, Australia, India, Slovenia. I have no clue how they've tracked me down. So more and more, if you're buying books in bookstores, a lot of them are self-published. I'd like to take just a couple of minutes to tell you a little bit about my books. I wrote a lot creatively in high school, and then when I headed off to university, I quit writing. Then, during the COVID first lockdown, I decided I had to do something to escape the realities around us. I took out my laptop, and the first sentence of my first book came out. And I thought, oh, well, let's give this a try. I was an academic like Dieter, and when you're writing a future of a land of hope, which we all desperately need these days, being an academic isn't necessarily the right writing style, so that was quite a challenge for me at first. This is a book that takes place within the Sudbury region, although it's masked, it's not called that. And it's about an intergenerational family living on a farm 50 years in the future in this one, and a continuation onto the next generation 20 years later in this book. The matriarch, Granny, is in her late 80s, and she's a force to be reckoned with. She was one of the originators of the Earth Project, which is in these books a worldwide regreening exercise sparked and, for me, inspired as a writer by the Sudbury regreening. She and her husband were the first activists actually promoting what they called the Earth Project. The youngest generation are 15 and 13. The 13 is establishing herself as a very well-known musician, a little bit like Taylor Swift of the future. And the other one is really perplexed what her role will be. She has a lot of pressure and a lot of high expectations by people. And the book takes us through a series of secrets that she uncovers in this apparently utopic world that has a few hidden secrets. And along the way, she finds her very powerful voice and abilities. The second book talks about the 4 children of these 2 young ones in the first book. And the second book was a challenge because one of our granddaughters asked me to put a dragon in it. And it took me quite a while to figure out how 50, 70 years from now we might have a dragon flying around. But I came up with a backstory that you have to kind of let go of reality and run with that particular book. So I'm going to stop here. I'll be back there. All we need for the draw is your name and a contact, just in case you have to leave right away. And once again, I'd like to thank everybody for welcoming me and for allowing me to talk a little bit about independent publishing.
Thank you, Anne-Marie. And again, I can tell you that I have read both of her books, and if I were still teaching in a classroom, I would be very happy to introduce children to them, and we could have a lot of very valuable discussions about the world today and the world of the future that would be very educational, and they're also very entertaining. Our third presenter is Lindsay Mayhew, and she's representing Latitude 46 Publishing Company. This company is highly commended for their commitment in supporting Northern Ontario writers. And it's certainly a revelation to me, and probably to some of you, just how many wonderful authors we do have right here in Northeastern Ontario. So, Lindsay, I'll let you talk a little bit about Latitude 46.
Hello, everyone. I'm excited to be here with you today, excited to participate in the celebration of the literary arts. As was said, my name is Lindsay Mayhew. I am a spoken word poet and editor born and raised here in Sudbury. I am also the marketing and social media manager at Latitude 46 Publishing. So I'm honored to be here with you sharing a little bit more about who we are and what we do. And a little bit later, I will also be sharing an excerpt from my own poem in our upcoming spring release. So Heather Campbell is the publisher of Latitude 46, and in 2015 with Laura Stradiotto, they founded what is now the only English literary publisher in all of Northern Ontario. This also means that this year in 2025, Latitude 46 Publishing has now been in business for a decade. So we're celebrating our 10-year anniversary in March. And in those 10 years, we have published 46 books, including debut and celebrated authors alike. So as Dieter mentioned, we have published the Northern Ontario legend Rod Carley, acclaimed poet Kim Fauner, and international best-selling author Danielle Daniel. And one of our authors is the incredible Dieter Busey, who spoke with you previously. We had the pleasure of working with him on several books, most recently the second edition of Come On Over, which is just over there if you want to take a peek at it. So it's truly beautiful to work in this field of the literary arts because what we deal in is stories. So we celebrate the stories of your neighbors, your loved ones, your children, and even people like yourselves. When Latitude 46 was created, the goal was to publish distinctive literary works that highlight a connection to Northern Ontario and its unique landscape and culture. In fact, Latitude 46 got its name because we are situated in Sudbury along the 46th parallel. So Northern Ontario is ingrained in our identity as a business and who we are. Now, after 10 years, we can proudly say that we have made a mark on Canadian literature and uplifted a lot of different voices in Northern Ontario. So some of the things that we publish is poetry, fiction, memoir, nonfiction, and young adult books. But maybe you've never learned much about the world of publishing or what that really looks like. So I'll walk you through some of the things that we do when we do publish a book. So one of the first things is accepting a manuscript. An author will share their hard work and their story with us, and we assign them our consulting editor, whose name is Randall Perry. And he will make edits to get it ready to be released into the world. And then we need to put together things like a book description, hire an artist to make the cover, finish the interior of the book, and put together marketing material and book information so that it can go online and be sold anywhere in the world. Actually, we ideally have the book ready 6 months in advance to its release date. And this gives us time to build excitement about the book through publicity and marketing. So we will send it to reviewers, journals, create ads, plan tours for our authors, and more. Then, after all this love and time has been put into the book, we finally release it for the world to enjoy. So what I do personally at Latitude 46 includes a lot of what I just described. I create engaging material on social media so that the people who will enjoy our books can actually find them. And I'm also doing a lot of the behind-the-scenes work with marketing and promotion. So even though you hold up a book, it looks like this really simple, compact, wholesome thing. It's actually a product of a lot of different people coming together to make the stories inside shine. And that's true of books that have gone through a publishing house or indie books as well. It's the result of a lot of love and care and hard work. I have also worked with Latitude 46 in the past as an editor, and one of the books that I worked on is the upcoming spring release, 1,000 Tiny Awakenings. Fellow poet Connor Lafortune and I worked together to create this anthology, which features 13 new and emerging artists and a few of our own poems. So I will tell you a bit about that process as well, what it looks like creating an anthology. So first we sent a call out for submissions of poetry, short fiction, and art. Once we received all of them, we chose which we wanted to be part of the collection and worked alongside the authors to strengthen their pieces and place them all in an order that told an impactful story. As I mentioned at the beginning, I'm going to share with you an excerpt from my own poem in the book about growing up in Sudbury, and this is called Meteor Fragmenting. Home is a scrapbook of juxtaposition, a kaleidoscope of memories and becomings, all fragmented, colorful, jagged. I extend my arms to those that raised me and thank my childhood. What a privilege it is to be loved, running through creeks, clean air to breathe, and birds chirping. If place is part of my identity, I am painted in the murals on Elgin Street. I am sidewalk chalked outside Silver City. I am calcified in the shoreline of Ramsey. You'll find me wafting in the scent of brewed coffee in the lively Tim Hortons. Home is where every person I grew up loving exists. So how could I not love every inch of it? So that is an excerpt from the poem coming up in the upcoming spring release. So despite a lot of the difficulties and hard work that takes to run a business of any kinds or be an author, there are a lot of beautiful full circle moments in publishing where you can see the art behind someone's story and you can bring it to life on the page. And it's moments like this that make book publishing very, very worth it. So if you are at all curious about us and who we are, if you're an author yourself and you want to submit a manuscript, or you just want to check out our books, see what we have a lot of great things that I'm sure you will enjoy. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram. You can visit our website at latitude46publishing.com. And then I also have a booth over there if you want to see what I brought in today. And I'm happy to chat more with you if you have any questions or if you want to share with me what your favorite book is. So thank you very much for having me today.
Wow, I'm inspired. I'm heading over there and buying that book in just a few moments' time. I want to thank Pat for doing a great job in introducing our guests. The books out there, local books, are really worth reading. Now there's other books from Northern Ontario I think you might be interested in as well too. One thing that wasn't mentioned in Latitude 46 is Wordstock, which is an annual festival of authors, which takes place here in Sudbury every year. Wordstock, a little play on words there. But I recall, I guess it was just 3 years ago that Charlie Angus made an appearance at Wordstock. And at my request, he actually sang one of his songs from the Grievous Angels. And his book, Cobalt, is certainly worth reading. And he has a new book out now. And he was interviewed on TV Ontario just a week or so ago with his new book. And it is an eye-opener. Both his Cobalt book about mining in Northern Ontario and the exploitation of our resources is certainly worth a read. His new book dealing with the disadvantaged, the homeless, the situations that we now currently face is certainly worth a read as well too. Charlie, of course, is retiring from politics this time around after a really quite incredible tenure in the House of Commons. And I think we all owe him a debt, especially those in the Timmins, James Bay area, which he's represented for, I think, over 7 elections now. Quite amazing. One other book by Andre Dumas, which I might be interested in, which is called From Inception to Oblivion, I think is if I can remember the title. And I was so impressed that I bought copies for all my kids. It's not a happy book because it deals with what we're facing right now. It's commonly known as global warming, but there's so many other factors involved in the situation we now face. A lot of us aren't going to have to worry about it because, well, we'll be dead. But the upcoming generation is going to probably judge us somewhat for not looking after our environment more than we already have. But From Creation to Oblivion by Andre Dumas, if you get a chance, it's available, of course, online as well too. But it's a little scary to read because it deals with our human condition, and of course we have several humans in our environment right now, especially south of the border, that are not acting in our best interest, and it's certainly worth a read. So I'm going to call up Keith, who's going to talk about getting membership in CARP, because it's something that people keep asking, and years ago we used to sign up members at our meetings. But that hasn't been the case now for some time. But it's still very easy to sign up. And you can be a CARP member and support our efforts. But before I leave you, I just want to get an impression from you. We have an election coming up, like it or not. Now, over the past number of years, CARP has held all candidates meetings, both for the provincial and federal and municipal elections. This next election, of course, provincially is coming up on the 27th of February, which doesn't give us much time. But do you think we should hold another all candidates meeting to give you the opportunity to question the candidates and your feelings about, do I see heads nodding? Yeah, no, you're going this way. You don't think it's worthwhile? I don't think it's worthwhile either, but nevertheless, we have, in the democratic process, we have to have the opportunity to question those people who do want to represent us, in this case at Queen's Park coming up, and who knows, early next, well, I guess could be June, could be a federal election, we may do the same thing again. And then of course in 2026, we have a municipal election. So, like it or not, democracy is in danger, but we are those who elect, and I guess we have a responsibility. So we're going to look into that. We're going to check with the Older Adult Center to see if they have a Sunday afternoon before February the 27th that we can call in our candidates from both Nickel Belt and Sudbury to have them tell us what they think they're going to do for the next 4 years. We just hope we're going to be around that long. Keith?
Yeah.
Did I say Daryl, one of our other members? Daryl, where are you? There you are. I'm not sure if I mentioned you before, one of our new board members. And glad to have you with us along with our other board members. And we have about 1,400 members in Northern Ontario.
Yep.
1,400 members. So this video will be going out to those folks who couldn't make it today. But too bad for them. But anyway, take over.
More housework. We're going to have, anybody ever got their 50-50 draw and their, what the other draw you got?
Spin
Free ticket for membership.
Or renewal.
For renewal and 50-50, if you wanted to get a ticket, they'll be drawing that very shortly. We've got another draw at the back for the book. And the only other thing, if you want to know anything about membership, I'll be at that table right there beside Marianne, and I'll answer any of your questions about membership. We can sign you up today if you want to, or we can tell you any other issues about membership. One of our biggest problems is trying to get a hold of people, and we're trying to maybe investigate robocalls. And that's where we would make a phone call to you and say, there's a meeting coming up Friday, are you going to be there? It's more conducive than having somebody phone you, which is very tedious. So hopefully you'll accept that program. Yeah.
Maybe a show of hands for robocalls, but
Yeah.
anybody,
Well, I was just going to ask you, is anybody here against the robocalls? You hate them. Oh, there's one. I don't blame you. I know what you're talking about. But it's the only way we can get a hold of you, because some folks have emails and no phone number, or no phone number and email, or none of each. But it's a regular program to do. We're looking to get robo texting. It would be a text come on your phone like you get from your gas company or whatever. But we're trying to get more ways of approaching you or getting information to you about meetings and other activities. Now, anything else that you would like to know about? I'll be at the table there, and if you want to sign up, you want to do the draw now? Ready?
yeah, sure.
Yep, we're going to do the draw unless you want to buy another ticket. Last chance. Going, gone. Okay.